Something is boiling inside the Cleveland Browns organization, and it's getting harder for anyone to ignore. What started as a few questionable play calls and some quiet frustration behind the scenes has now exploded into full-on public drama. Cam Newton has stepped in with blunt honesty, Jerry Jeudy is catching heat for all the wrong reasons, and Shedeur Sanders, a rookie thrown into chaos, is somehow becoming the calmest voice in a situation that keeps spiraling out of control. The Browns didn't just lose a game, they exposed the cracks everybody has been trying to pretend aren't there. Jeudy's sideline attitude, the receiver's lack of effort, the shaky offensive line, and the coaching staff's inability to build a real identity have created a storm around a quarterback who's barely getting started. And when Cam Newton called it out, he didn't sugarcoat a thing. He made it clear. This isn't just about one bad performance, it's a structural failure. Shedeur Sanders is being asked to carry a team with no reliable weapons, no consistent protection, and no real offensive direction. Yet he's the one staying composed, staying focused, and showing flashes of talent this franchise hasn't seen in years. That contrast between a rookie showing maturity and veterans losing control is why Cleveland suddenly finds itself at the center of the NFL conversation. But here's the twist. The deeper you look, the more obvious it becomes that Shedeur isn't the problem. He might be the only thing keeping the Browns from completely falling apart. When Cam Newton spoke up about the Browns situation, it didn't feel like your usual retired player opinion. It felt like a warning shot, a reality check, a veteran quarterback spelling out what everyone inside that Cleveland locker room has been whispering for weeks, and what fans are finally starting to see. Cam didn't try to soften the message or dance around names. He went straight at the heart of the problem. The Browns do not have a real number one option on offense, and the receivers, especially Jerry Jeudy, are not playing like guys who want to help their young quarterback succeed. And that's what made Cam's comments hit so hard. He wasn't simply talking about talent, he was talking about attitude, leadership, and effort. He saw exactly what everyone else saw when Jeudy snapped at Shedeur Sanders, a veteran receiver losing his cool, refusing to look in the mirror, and acting like someone else was holding him back. Instead of being the steady hand, Jeudy became the spark to a fire the Browns didn't need. But Cam didn't stop there. He pointed out something far more important than one argument. This offense is built without a foundation. No dominant tight end, no consistent receiver, no one who can take over a game. And so the responsibility falls on who? A rookie quarterback? A rookie running back? That's not a plan. That's desperation disguised as strategy. Cam's words exposed the truth behind the meltdown. Jeudy wasn't just frustrated with targets. He was frustrated with an offense that has no identity, an offense that doesn't create opportunities, an offense that puts the quarterback in impossible situations and then expects miracles. In Cam's eyes, Jeudy's behavior wasn't just embarrassing, it was misguided, because he wasn't yelling at the real problem. And that's why his message landed with so many fans. It wasn't about taking sides, it was about accountability. Jeudy wants the ball? Then he needs to act like someone Shedeur can rely on. The offense wants more explosive plays? Then the receivers need to create separation, fight for catches, and show they're worth trusting. You can't demand production when you're not producing. The most telling part of Cam's breakdown was simple. Shedeur isn't failing the Browns. The Browns are failing him. And as Cam reminded everyone, until the veterans around him decide to step up, Cleveland's offense will keep collapsing under the weight of its own excuses. Shedeur Sanders walked into his second NFL start, carrying more pressure than most rookies ever face. Not only was he trying to prove he belonged, he was doing it behind an offensive line that folds too easily and alongside receivers who disappear when it matters most. The stat line from that game: 149 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 sacks, doesn't tell the full story. It hides the chaos he had to navigate, the breakdowns around him, and the complete lack of help from the very players who are supposed to make his job easier. The loss wasn't about Sanders. It was about the offense unraveling around him. Every young quarterback goes through tough learning moments. But what Shedeur faced wasn't a learning moment. It was survival mode. 3 sacks could have easily been 6 or 7 if he didn't have the pocket awareness he developed during his college career. A handful of those throws weren't checkdowns by choice. They were checkdowns because nothing else was available. When the pocket collapsed, he extended plays. When receivers couldn't get open, he tried to create something out of nothing. And when plays fell apart completely, he stayed poised instead of panicking. But here's the part that really exposes the Browns. Even with everything going wrong, Shedeur was the only player who looked composed. The offensive line was missing blocks. Routes were being run at half speed. Timing was off. The receivers didn't fight for the ball. The running game had no rhythm. And yet Shedeur kept stepping up, kept commanding the huddle, kept showing that rare calm you can't teach. The Browns didn't lose because their quarterback was inexperienced. They lost because everything around him was unreliable. And that's exactly what Cam Newton and other analysts have been saying. How can a rookie quarterback shine when the pieces around him aren't doing their jobs? You can't expect a young QB to thrive when he's constantly running for his life or waiting for receivers who can't separate, can't catch consistently, and can't execute under pressure. Shedeur isn't perfect, but he's showing something the Browns desperately need: resilience, leadership, and the ability to stay cool in a collapsing situation. Most rookies crumble in an environment like this. Shedeur didn't. He stood tall even when everything else fell apart. That says more about his potential than his numbers ever could. The question now is simple. How long can one rookie keep carrying an offense that refuses to carry him? If there's one position group that was supposed to make Shedeur's life easier, it was the receivers. But instead, they've become the biggest source of chaos. And at the center of it all is Jerry Jeudy, a player with big expectations, big personality, and lately, very little production. Cam Newton wasn't exaggerating when he said the Browns don't have a true #1 target. The real issue isn't just lack of talent. It's lack of commitment, effort, and accountability. Jeudy's sideline blow-up wasn't just a random emotional moment. It was the public breaking point of a pattern that has been simmering for weeks. Missed routes, lazy cuts, no separation, giving up on plays before the ball arrives. These aren't minor mistakes. They're signs of a receiver mentally checking out. And when Shedeur is standing in the pocket, waiting for someone to get open, those lapses turn into sacks, turnovers, and stalled drives. What makes it worse is Jeudy's attitude. Instead of acknowledging dropped passes or half-speed routes, he directs his frustration at the quarterback, the one guy who's actually fighting through the storm. And that's what Cam Newton called out. Jeudy acting like a star when he's playing like a role player. You can't yell about targets when you're not earning them. You can't blame the QB for missing you when you're giving up mid-route. And you definitely can't demand respect when you haven't been reliable all season. But Jeudy isn't the only problem. The entire receiver room has struggled. No one is stepping up as a consistent threat. No one is creating mismatches. No one is giving Shedeur the safety blanket every rookie QB needs. This is why the offense looks so limited. Shedeur isn't refusing deep shots. He literally doesn't have deep shot options because nobody is doing the work to win downfield. And while the film shows receivers jogging routes, giving up on contested catches, and failing to sync with the quarterback, you know what else it shows? Shedeur staying calm, keeping his technique, and refusing to point fingers. He could easily expose who isn't doing their job. He could throw teammates under the bus, but he won't. That's leadership Jeudy isn't showing. The hard truth, you can't build a passing attack when your receivers are acting like spectators. Until the veterans around him step up, Shedeur will keep paying for their mistakes, while they blame him for results he didn't create. If the receivers are part of the problem, the coaching staff especially Kevin Stefanski, is the engine driving all of it. And Cam Newton didn't hesitate to highlight what fans have been noticing all season. The Browns don't just have a talent issue. They have a direction issue, an identity issue, a coaching issue. And it all lands on the shoulders of the man calling the plays. Stefanski naming Shedeur Sanders the Week 14 starter might sound like confidence, but the way he's been using him tells a completely different story. Instead of unleashing Shedeur's strengths, his deep ball touch, his mobility, his timing, the staff has wrapped him in the most conservative offense imaginable. Screen, check down, run, screen, quick slant, punt, rinse, repeat. They're not coaching him to grow, they're coaching him not to make mistakes. But here's the part that really exposes the inconsistency. Where was all this caution when Dillon Gabriel was playing? Gabriel was allowed to throw 52 times in one game. An insane number for any rookie, especially one who looked completely overwhelmed. Joe Flacco got full freedom in his starts too. Aggressive plays, deep shots, full playbook. But when Shedeur steps in, everything tightens up. The offense becomes predictable. The training wheels come out. It's a double standard you can't ignore. And it gets worse. Stefanski's decision-making is putting Shedeur at risk. Weak protection, predictable calls, and zero adjustments mid-game. When the offensive line collapses, the play calls don't change. When receivers can't create separation, the route concepts stay the same. When the defense clearly knows what's coming, Stefanski still sticks to the script. How is a young quarterback supposed to succeed in that environment? Stefanski also fails in the one area every young QB desperately needs help with: development. Instead of designing plays to build Shedeur's confidence, instead of leaning into what he does best, instead of using motion or mismatches to help receivers get open, the Browns keep calling plays that isolate Shedeur and make him look like the problem, when he's actually the one surviving the problems around him. Cam Newton said it best: if you gave Gabriel and Flacco a real chance to prove themselves, you owe Shedeur the same. But Stefanski hasn't done that. He's given him responsibility without support, expectations without resources, pressure without protection. And until the coaching changes, the Browns will keep wasting the one thing they can't afford to lose: a quarterback who actually shows promise. Cam Newton's comparison to Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott wasn't just nostalgia. It was a reality check. When Dak entered the league as a rookie, he wasn't thrown into chaos. He wasn't running for his life behind a collapsing offensive line. He wasn't begging receivers to finish routes or fighting a playbook designed to hide him. Instead, he walked into one of the most well-built rookie environments the NFL had ever seen. The best offensive line in football, a dominant running game, and reliable receivers who created separation consistently. That's what support looks like. That's how you develop a young quarterback. That's how you build confidence instead of destroying it. And that's exactly why Cleveland's situation looks so disastrous in comparison. The Browns have none of the pieces Dak relied on. Their offensive line has cracks everywhere, forcing Shedeur to escape the pocket before plays even develop. Their receivers, led by Jerry Jeudy, are underperforming so badly that even basic timing routes look out of sync. The tight end position, which should be a rookie quarterback's safety valve, is practically invisible. And the play calling? It's so conservative and predictable that defenses don't even have to guess. They know exactly what's coming. Now imagine Dak Prescott's rookie year. If the Cowboys had asked him to carry a broken roster, without a reliable run game, without top-tier protection, without receivers committed to the play, and without a coaching staff willing to adjust, he wouldn't have become Dak Prescott. He would have become another name on a struggling rookie QB list. That's what Shedeur is fighting against every single week. And Cam's comparison wasn't meant to hype Dak. It was meant to highlight how unfair Shedeur's circumstances are. Rookie quarterbacks aren't supposed to elevate everyone around them. They're supposed to grow with their team, not carry it. But Shedeur isn't getting that luxury. Every mistake turns into a headline. Every missed throw becomes a debate. Every sideline moment becomes an accusation. Meanwhile, no one is asking why the receivers aren't winning their matchups. No one is questioning why the offensive line keeps collapsing. No one is holding the coaching staff accountable for putting Shedeur in impossible situations. Dak had an elite support system. Shedeur has survival mode. And that's the entire point Cam Newton was trying to make. It's not that Shedeur isn't good enough. It's that the Browns aren't good enough around him. Until Cleveland fixes that, no quarterback, rookie or veteran, will succeed. Before the finger-pointing, before Jerry Jeudy's sideline meltdown, and before the entire offense started collapsing under its own issues, Shedeur Sanders quietly did something almost no one in Cleveland has managed to do in decades. He made history. In his very first full start as the Browns quarterback, he did what 42 other quarterbacks since 1999 failed to do. He won. That stat alone tells you everything about the instability Cleveland has lived with for years. 42 quarterbacks. That's not a sign of a rebuilding team. That's the sign of a franchise constantly searching for an answer and never committing long enough to find one. So when Shedeur stepped in and broke that streak, it wasn't just a victory on the field. It was a moment of hope for a team that hasn't had much of it. His stat line from that debut, 11 for 20, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, doesn't scream superstar. But that's not the point. The point is how he commanded the offense, how he controlled the huddle, how he played with a calmness you rarely see in someone taking their first NFL snaps. It wasn't about perfect numbers. It was about presence. And that's exactly what the Browns have been missing. Shedeur didn't play scared. He didn't hide behind conservative throws. He made reads. He took chances. He pushed the ball when it was there. He settled the offense when pressure rose. And even in a system not designed around him, he made plays that reminded analysts why scouts were so high on him coming out of college. Cam Newton pointed this out perfectly. It wasn't the stats that mattered. It was the moment, the way Shedeur rose to it, the way he handled a role that has broken so many quarterbacks before him. Cleveland fans weren't just celebrating a win. They were celebrating a quarterback who didn't look overwhelmed by the weight of the franchise's past failures. But here's where things get complicated. Shedeur gave Cleveland a spark, but the organization hasn't given that spark the fuel it needs. Since that first win, instead of nurturing his momentum, the Browns surrounded him with confusion, weak protection, inconsistent receiving, and questionable coaching decisions. The very things that held back the 42 quarterbacks before him are creeping in again. And that's why this moment matters. Shedeur showed Cleveland what's possible, but the Browns have to decide if they're willing to build on it. When Cam Newton talked about Shedeur Sanders making big boy plays, he wasn't exaggerating or trying to hype a rookie just for drama. He was pointing out something the film makes impossible to ignore. Shedeur has already shown moments that no Browns quarterback, not Baker Mayfield, not Deshaun Watson, not Johnny Manziel, not Joe Flacco, has shown in years. Not consistently, not confidently, and definitely not this early in their careers. These weren't lucky throws or broken play miracles. They were deliberate, high-level decisions. Plays where Shedeur looked off the safety, manipulated the linebackers with his eyes, and dropped the pass exactly where only his receiver could get it. Plays where he escaped pressure without panicking, kept his base, and delivered a strike on the move. Plays where he trusted his timing, trusted his arm, and trusted himself. Even when no one around him gave him a reason to. That's what Cam meant by a big boy play. It's the difference between hoping your quarterback develops and seeing the early signs that he already has something special. What makes those flashes even more impressive is the environment he's operating in. Shedeur isn't making these plays behind an elite offensive line or with a consistent receiving core. He isn't throwing to Pro Bowl-level weapons. He isn't protected by a coaching staff designing an aggressive, QB-friendly scheme. He's doing it in a system that feels patched together, on an offense that lacks reliability, inside an organization still trying to find its identity. And despite that, he still creates moments that make analysts sit up, moments that make defenders shake their heads, moments that make fans say, "Wait, do we finally have something here?" This is the part people keep misunderstanding about the Browns' quarterback situation. It's not about the stat sheet. It's not about the final score. It's not about one win or one loss. It's about the traits, the flashes, the instincts, the kind of plays that translate across systems, across coordinators, across rosters. Those flashes are the reason Cam got animated. Those flashes are why former players are defending Shedeur. Those flashes are why teammates quietly respect him. And those flashes are why it's so frustrating to see him limited by conservative play calling, inconsistent effort from receivers, and instability throughout the offense. Shedeur's ceiling is higher than Cleveland seems to realize. He's making plays veterans struggle to make, and he's doing it under pressure, in chaos, with almost no support. The question now is simple. Will the Browns finally build around the talent they clearly have, or waste another quarterback who shows things you cannot teach? At this point, it's impossible to ignore what's right in front of the Browns organization, the NFL media, and the fan base. Shedeur Sanders is not the problem. He's the opportunity. He's the one thing in this chaotic, unstable, drama-filled situation that actually shows signs of long-term potential. And yet somehow, he's also the one carrying the weight of every mistake around him. That's the real issue Cam Newton was highlighting. Not the missed blocks, not the drops, not the questionable play calling. The pattern. Cleveland has finally stumbled into a quarterback who shows early flashes of poise, intelligence, and legitimate NFL-caliber playmaking. And instead of building a system that lets him grow, they're suffocating him with a roster and scheme that would sink almost any rookie. Look at the reality. The offensive line hasn't been stable in years. The receivers aren't reliable or consistent. There's no true WR1, no dynamic tight end, and no weapon the defense fears. And the conservative offensive identity forces Shedeur to play safe instead of playing smart. A huge difference for a quarterback with natural instincts. Yet he still creates those big boy plays. He still shows composure. He still shoulders responsibility even when it's not on him. He still handles the media like a veteran. And he still refuses to throw his teammates under the bus, even as some of them bring drama to his doorstep. That's leadership, the kind teams spend years chasing. But leadership isn't enough if the organization around him stays stuck in the same cycle it's been trapped in for decades. The Browns' history is filled with wasted talent, rushed prospects, mismatched schemes, and quarterback controversies that never needed to exist in the first place. Shedeur cannot become another name on that long, depressing list. Not when he's shown more potential in 2 starts than some quarterbacks showed in entire seasons. The Browns need to make a decision, a real one. Not a week-to-week panic reaction. Not a play it safe and blame the rookie approach. A commitment. Commit to developing Shedeur. Commit to giving him real weapons. Commit to an offensive identity that matches his strengths. Commit to stability instead of chaos. Because if Cleveland keeps holding him back, keeps forcing him into a broken system, keeps surrounding him with receivers who don't step up, then they aren't just failing him, they're failing themselves. Shedeur Sanders has the talent, the fire, and the mindset to change this franchise. The only question that matters now is, will the Browns finally change with him? Or waste the best chance they've had in years?